I'm Chloe, I'm 34. And last month, I found out my brother's getting married. Through a picture I was never supposed to see. One text changed how I looked at my own family forever. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people you thought would stand beside you forever. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories about family drama, betrayal, and emotional courage. I was standing in my small kitchen that morning, stirring a cup of instant coffee, when my phone buzzed twice on the counter. I didn't think much of it, probably a grocery store promotion or another weather alert. But then I saw the preview of the message. Family chat, new photo added. That stopped me. The words family chat hit differently, mostly because I hadn't seen that group name pop up in months. Not since last Thanksgiving, when my mom quietly removed me from it after a temporary misunderstanding. I had accepted it back then. Families fight, people take sides, and silence becomes easier than arguments. But somehow, the notification still appeared. Maybe they re-added me by mistake. Or maybe fate had a strange sense of humor that morning. I tapped it. There it was, a photo of my younger brother, Ethan, in a crisp gray suit, standing next to his fiancée, Amanda, holding a save-the-date card between them. The caption read, "Can't wait to celebrate our special day with everyone we love. Red heart." I froze. I read the caption 3 times, waiting for my name to appear somewhere. Maybe in a comment, a reply, a small tag. Nothing. It was like I didn't exist. I didn't know what to feel first, the shock, the confusion, or the quiet ache in my chest that made my breath catch. My brother and I were close once. Not the talk every day, kind of close, but the kind where you could sit in silence and still feel connected. When our parents fought, which was often, I'd take him out for ice cream just to distract him. I was the one who helped him fill out college applications, even stayed up late proofreading his essays. So seeing that smiling photo posted without a single word to me felt like someone erased me from the story we once shared. The smell of burnt toast pulled me back. I tossed the bread in the sink and leaned against the counter, my hands shaking around the mug. There had to be some mistake. Maybe they just hadn't finalized the guest list. Maybe Amanda wanted a smaller event. My mind tried to build excuses faster than the hurt could sink in. But deep down, I knew better. I scrolled down the thread. My parents had already commented. "So proud of you too. Red heart. Can't wait for the big day." And my aunt added, "Family reunion finally happening." The irony stung. Family reunion. I laughed under my breath. A short, bitter sound that didn't feel like me. That entire morning, I kept pacing the kitchen. I picked up my phone, put it down, picked it up again. I wanted to call Ethan, but my pride got in the way. I told myself I wouldn't be the one begging for an invite to my own brother's wedding. Still, curiosity chewed at me. Why? What had I done that made me unworthy of being there? At around noon, I finally dialed my mom. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, her voice calm, too calm. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "So, I saw something interesting today about Ethan's wedding." There was a pause. I could almost hear her heart skip. "Oh, you saw that?" "Yes," I replied softly. "I saw it." She sighed, the kind of sigh that carries more words than it releases. "Chloe, honey, it's complicated. You know how Amanda is. She wants things a certain way." I waited for her to continue, but she didn't. Just silence. "So she doesn't want me there?" I asked finally. "Don't take it personally, sweetheart." Mom said, "It's just smaller. Family only." Her words echoed in my head. Smaller. Family only. I felt the world tilt just a little. "I am family, Mom." "I know, honey," she whispered. But maybe it's better this way, less tension. That one broke me a little. After hanging up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at the half-empty coffee cup. The sunlight from the window stretched across the tablecloth, fading from gold to gray as the day went on. My phone buzzed again. A text from Amanda this time. "Hey, Chloe, just wanted to make sure you didn't take the invite situation the wrong way. We're keeping it really small. Hope you understand." Red heart. There it was again. That fake sweetness wrapped in politeness, like a gift box filled with glass shards. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, I just typed back, "Sure, no problem." Then I turned off my phone. But the truth is, there was a problem. A big one. It wasn't about a party or a wedding or a guest list. It was about being deliberately excluded from something that was supposed to mean family, love, and togetherness. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't sudden. It had been happening quietly for years. I started thinking back to all the little things I ignored. The times Amanda accidentally left me out of photos. The Christmas she gave everyone gifts except me, claiming mine got lost in the mail. The way she'd roll her eyes whenever I offered to help plan family dinners. Maybe this was her final move. Erase me completely. The thought stung worse than I expected. Around 3 p.m., I went for a walk to clear my head. The neighborhood was calm, the kind where everyone knows each other's dogs and weekend routines. I passed Mrs. Keller pruning her roses, waved, and forced a smile. She called out, "Everything okay, dear?" "Yeah, I lied. Just needed some air." But as soon as I turned the corner, the tears came, quiet, uncontrollable. I leaned against a fence post and let them fall. It wasn't just sadness. It was that hollow kind of hurt that comes from realizing people you love don't think of you anymore. That evening, I tried to distract myself, cooked dinner, watched reruns, scrolled social media. But no matter what I did, that image of Ethan in his gray suit kept flashing in my head. Then, something unexpected happened. While scrolling through my old photos, I stumbled upon a video, Ethan and I at Dad's retirement party, laughing so hard we could barely speak. We were singing karaoke off-key, surrounded by family. And in the background, I saw Amanda watching us. Not smiling, just watching. It clicked. She'd never liked how close we were, never liked how easily we got along. It wasn't about guest lists. It was about rewriting the family circle. That realization didn't bring comfort. It brought anger, a quiet, controlled anger that simmered beneath my ribs. Around midnight, I found myself writing an unsent letter in my notes app. "Dear Ethan, I hope she makes you happy. I hope the silence you chose over me is worth it. But just remember, I was there before her, and I'll still be here when the picture-perfect smiles fade." I didn't send it. I just saved it. For the first time that night, I didn't cry. I just sat in the dark, breathing slowly, feeling something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, but clarity. The next morning, I woke early, the sun just brushing across the blinds. I made coffee, same as always, but this time it tasted different, like routine was slowly losing its meaning. I glanced at the fridge, pictures of birthdays, graduations, family dinners. And then my eyes landed on one in particular, Ethan's high school graduation. He was smiling, holding his diploma. I was standing beside him with my arm around his shoulder. We looked inseparable. I took it off the fridge, stared at it for a long time, and whispered, "Guess that was the last time we were really family." Then I slipped it into a drawer. By noon, I decided something quietly but firmly. I wouldn't beg for inclusion anymore. Maybe being left out was painful, but maybe, just maybe, it was also freeing. I didn't know it yet, but that single decision would change everything. Because sometimes when someone shuts the door on you, It's the universe nudging you toward a different one, one that leads to self-respect, independence, and eventually peace. But that part of the story comes later. For now, all I had was a broken group chat, a silent phone, and the bitter taste of coffee gone cold. And somewhere in my brother's world, wedding plans were being finalized without me. The day began quietly, with the soft morning light slipping through the thin lace curtains of Amina's room. She sat on the edge of her bed, holding the invitation card that had arrived the evening before. The gold letters gleamed against the white background. Family celebration dinner, by invitation only. Her hands trembled slightly as she traced her fingers over the embossed border. It wasn't the invitation that hurt. It was the name missing from the guest list. Hers. For years, Amina had considered herself part of the family, even though she wasn't bound by blood. She had been there for every crisis, every illness, every late-night phone call for help. Yet, this time, when the family planned a special event, she found herself excluded. The morning felt heavier than usual. Amina tried to shake it off, made tea, tidied the house, and put on her favorite blue shawl, but the feeling of being left out clung to her like a shadow. Around noon, her phone buzzed. It was Sarah, her friend, and the daughter of the same family, hosting the event. "Amina, Auntie," Sarah said softly, "I wanted to tell you before you hear it from someone else. Tonight's dinner is just for close family." Mama said. "I understand, dear," Amina interrupted gently. "You don't have to explain." "I wish I could change it," Sarah said, her voice full of guilt. "Don't worry, Beta. It's fine. You enjoy the evening," Amina replied, forcing a smile that no one could see. As soon as the call ended, the silence in her house grew louder. Amina stood by the window, watching children play outside, their laughter echoing down the narrow street. She remembered the days when Sarah used to run into her arms after school, calling her, "Amina, Auntie, my favorite." Those memories warmed her heart, and yet, at that moment, they also ached. She wondered if she had expected too much. Perhaps being kind and helpful didn't always earn a place in people's hearts. That evening, she tried to distract herself. She cooked lentils, ironed a few clothes, and even switched on the TV. But every time she heard a car drive past, her mind drifted to the grand house where the celebration was happening, where laughter, lights, and music would fill the air. She finally gave up pretending. Taking her shawl, she stepped outside, intending only to walk to the corner store. But fate had other plans. As she passed by the neighborhood park, she saw the house across the road, the very one she had helped decorate during Sarah's birthdays and anniversaries, now glowing with fairy lights. Cars lined the street, guests arriving in elegant clothes. She could hear faint laughter, the sound of clinking glasses, and music that brought back memories of old family gatherings she used to be part of. Her feet froze. For a moment, she stood there, torn between pride and longing. She could have walked away, but something inside her, maybe hurt, maybe curiosity, made her stay. From a distance, she saw Sarah step out in a beautiful emerald dress, greeting guests with her bright smile. Amina's heart swelled with affection. She's grown so much, she thought. But then came the sharp sting of realization, and I'm no longer part of these moments. Just then, a voice broke her thoughts. "Amina, Auntie, you came." It was Ollie, Sarah's cousin. He jogged over, smiling warmly. "I was just passing by," Amina said softly, embarrassed. "Didn't mean to intrude." "You should come in. Everyone would love to see you." "No, Beta, it's all right. I wasn't invited." "That's nonsense," Ollie said. "Your family. I'll take you in myself." Before she could protest, he gently took her hand and led her toward the gate. At the entrance, a staff member stopped them. "I'm sorry, sir." The host said only family members are allowed inside. The words cut through her like a blade. Ollie tried to argue, but she stopped him. "It's okay, Ollie. Please don't make it awkward, she whispered. Her voice was steady, but her eyes glistened. She turned to leave quietly, her dignity wrapped around her like armor. Ollie stood frozen, watching her walk away under the soft glow of the streetlight. Amina didn't go straight home. She wandered through the nearby market, though most shops were closing. The smell of roasted corn, the chatter of shopkeepers, the hum of evening traffic, it all felt distant. She bought herself a small cup of tea and sat on a bench near the old fountain. As steam rose from her cup, she thought about life's strange balance, how people she once called family could now draw invisible lines. An elderly man selling flowers approached her. "Would you like some roses, Baji?" he asked kindly. "Not today," she smiled faintly. "You look like someone who loves flowers," he said. She chuckled. "I used to. Maybe I still do." The man handed her a single rose anyway. No one should be without a flower on a night like this. She thanked him and watched him walk away. That small gesture warmed her heart in a way that grand parties never could. Hours later, as she returned home, her phone buzzed again. Another call from Sarah. This time, her tone was anxious. "Amina, auntie, where were you? I was looking for you everywhere. I told Mama you should have been here." She finally realized, and "It's all right, Beta," Amina said softly. "I saw everything from outside. You looked beautiful tonight." "Oh, auntie, please don't say that. You should have been inside. Everyone missed you." "No, dear, no one missed me. But that's okay. Sometimes life reminds us where we truly belong." There was a pause. Sarah began to cry quietly on the phone. "You've always been family to me, auntie. I don't care what others say. And that's enough for me," Amina said, her voice trembling but calm. "Now go, enjoy your evening. Don't let my absence spoil your joy." When the call ended, Amina looked around her small, tidy home. It wasn't grand, but it was hers. Every corner held her memories, her peace, and her pride. She placed the rose in a small glass of water and smiled faintly. Family, she thought, isn't always about invitations or gatherings. Sometimes it's just the people who remember you when the party ends. The next morning, Amina woke early as usual. She made breakfast, fed the stray cat that always waited by her door, and watered her plants. The sun rose gently, spreading gold over her tiny garden. Later that day, she received another knock on the door, this time from Sarah and her mother. They both stood, awkwardly, holding a large box. "Amina," the older woman began, "I owe you an apology. Yesterday, I realized how wrong it was to exclude you. You've done more for our family than some of our own relatives." Amina looked at her calmly. "It's all right. You don't owe me anything." "No, please," the woman insisted. "I was foolish. I thought limiting the guest list would keep things simple. But when Sarah told me you stood outside and left quietly, I couldn't sleep all night." Sarah handed her the box. Inside was a piece of the celebration cake and a framed photo of the family with a handwritten note, "To our dearest Amina auntie, because no family is complete without you." Tears filled Amina's eyes, but this time they were tears of quiet joy. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means more to me than any invitation ever could." They stayed for tea, laughter slowly replacing the awkwardness. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was real. Later that evening, as Amina sat by her window again, the rose still fresh beside her, she realized something profound. Sometimes people forget your place in their lives, not out of malice, but out of habit. It's only when absence speaks louder than presence that hearts begin to listen. The faint music from the previous night had faded, replaced by the comforting rhythm of life, the distant call of a street vendor, the laughter of children, the sound of her own heartbeat calm and steady. She smiled softly to herself. "Sorry, dear, This event is for family only, they had said. But Amina now understood something deeper. Family isn't about being invited. It's about being remembered. And that realization, quiet, humble, and deeply human, filled her heart more than any party ever could. The morning after Sarah and her mother visited, the world outside Amina's window felt softer somehow. The air was cool, and the sunlight poured gently through the lace curtains, casting golden patterns on the wall. She sat quietly with a cup of tea, the same rose still standing proud in its glass beside her. For the first time in weeks, her chest didn't feel as heavy. But beneath that calm, something new stirred, a quiet urge for distance. Not the kind born from anger, but the kind that whispers, "You need a breath of your own." She didn't want pity, nor did she want to sit in the same rooms filled with memories that had begun to ache. A trip, a small one, maybe, felt right. Something to remind herself that life stretched beyond the narrow circle of her small town, beyond the parties she wasn't invited to, beyond the roles people had quietly boxed her into. She took out her old leather-bound diary, flipped to a blank page, and wrote in her slanted handwriting. Trip, not to escape, but to breathe. It had been years since she'd traveled anywhere alone. The last trip she remembered was with Sarah's family to Murray during winter. She smiled faintly, recalling the snow fights, the laughter, the warmth of shared meals. But this time, it would be different. It would be hers. By evening, she had made up her mind. She packed a small suitcase, 2 shawls, a journal, a pair of comfortable shoes, and her favorite book of poetry by Faiz Ahmed Faiz. Then she opened her savings jar, coins and small notes she had collected over months for someday. She decided that someday was now. After searching on her old phone for nearby destinations, one place stood out, Hunza Valley. It wasn't just a location. It was an idea. Vast mountains, clean air, strangers with open smiles. Somewhere she could walk freely without the weight of being known. She booked a ticket for the next morning's bus and messaged Sarah briefly. "Going on a short trip, dear. Don't worry. Just need a little change of scenery." Sarah replied with hearts and a "You deserve it" Ani red heart. Amina smiled and placed her phone aside. That night, for the first time in months, she slept without dreams filled with disappointment. The next morning, she woke early before dawn. The streets were still hushed, with only a few shopkeepers setting up their stalls. She carried her small bag and locked her door, feeling a strange mix of sadness and excitement. The bus station was already bustling, vendors selling tea and samosas, travelers lugging suitcases, children half asleep on their parents' shoulders. When she found her seat by the window, the horizon was turning pink. She wrapped her shawl tightly around her shoulders, the hum of the engine vibrating beneath her. The driver started the bus, and as it rolled forward, the town she had lived in all her life began to fade behind her. It felt like shedding an old skin. Hours passed, the roads twisted through hills and valleys, the landscape unfolding like a moving painting, patches of mustard fields, villages with smoke rising from breakfast fires, children waving from the roadside. Amina watched it all in silence, her heart swelling with something she hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. She reached into her bag, pulled out her journal, and began to write. Sometimes, distance is not between two cities. It's between the person you were and the person you are becoming. The man sitting beside her glanced curiously at her handwriting and smiled politely. He looked about her age, maybe slightly older, dressed simply, carrying a worn-out backpack. "Traveling alone?" he asked kindly. "Yes," she replied with a small smile. "First time in years." "Good for you," he said. "Sometimes we need solitude to remember who we are." They talked briefly about travel, life, books, then fell into comfortable silence. She didn't even ask his name, and he didn't ask hers. It was that kind of rare, peaceful company, two travelers connected only by the same road. By late afternoon, The bus reached the foothills. The air grew cooler, the scenery more majestic. Snow-dusted peaks shimmered in the distance like they were brushed by silver. Amina felt her heart lift with every mile. When they finally arrived in Hunza, the sun was dipping behind the mountains, casting everything in a golden hue. She checked into a small guest house, run by an older couple, friendly faces with warm smiles. The woman, who introduced herself as Yasmin, showed her to a cozy room with wooden floors, a large window overlooking the valley, and the faint scent of pine drifting in from outside. "You're lucky," Yasmin said. "It's apple season. The whole valley smells sweet these days." "It's beautiful," Amina whispered, gazing out at the peaks. "I can already feel peace here." That evening, she walked down to a small cafe nearby. The place was quiet. Only a few travelers and locals sipping chai, some reading, others simply watching the sunset. She ordered a cup of tea and a slice of walnut cake. The first sip warmed her from the inside. For a moment, she closed her eyes, listening to the wind brushing against the window panes. No phone buzzing, no guilt pressing at her heart, no reminders of what she wasn't invited to. Just the sound of her own breathing and the quiet hum of life moving around her. This, she thought, is what peace feels like. The next morning, she joined a small group hike to Eagle's Nest Point, a viewpoint known for its breathtaking sunrise. Wrapped in her shawl, she climbed slowly, feeling the crunch of gravel beneath her shoes, her breath fogging in the cold air. The sky gradually shifted from navy to deep orange, and then to blinding gold as the first rays touched the snow-capped mountains. Everyone around her was busy taking pictures, but Amina just stood there, her eyes glistening with tears. Not from sadness, but from the sheer vastness of it all. She whispered to herself, "I thought I needed to belong somewhere. Maybe I just needed to remember that the world itself is big enough to hold me." Later that day, she visited the local market, where artisans sold hand-woven shawls, wooden jewelry, and jars of honey. A young boy approached her, holding a basket of fresh apples. "Ani, would you like some?" he asked eagerly. She smiled and bought a few, handing him extra money. "Keep the change," she said kindly. "Shukriya, Auntie," he beamed, running off to tell his friends. She took one of the apples, polished it against her sleeve, and bit into it. The taste was crisp, sweet, and grounding. That simple moment, the crunch of the apple, the laughter of children, the cool mountain air felt like a kind of quiet rebirth. That night, Amina sat outside her guest house under a sky filled with stars, thousands of them clear and endless. She had never seen so many at once. It reminded her of the nights back home, when power would go out and she'd light candles, pretending she wasn't afraid of the dark. But this darkness wasn't empty. It was full of wonder. The guest house owner joined her, offering a cup of hot green tea. "You remind me of my sister," Yasmin said softly. "She used to travel alone too. Said mountains listen better than people." Amina laughed lightly. Maybe she was right. These mountains, they don't judge or ask questions. "Exactly," Yasmin nodded. "They just stand quietly, reminding you that life goes on, no matter who forgets you." Those words lingered with her long after she went to bed. On her third day, Amina visited an old fort perched high above the valley. She took her time exploring, touching the cool stone walls, reading the plaques, watching sunlight spill through ancient windows. At the top, she found a quiet corner and sat down with her journal. She began to write. Forgiveness doesn't always mean going back. Sometimes it's just setting yourself free. As she wrote, a gentle breeze lifted her scarf, carrying it a few feet away before it caught on a wooden railing. She laughed softly, chasing it down, a small, playful moment that made her feel years younger. Then she noticed a group of travelers taking pictures nearby, a family laughing together, a mother adjusting her son's hat, a father pretending to slip on the rocks to make them laugh. For a fleeting second, Amina's chest tightened, but instead of sadness, she felt warmth, the realization that joy existed everywhere, and she could still feel part of it even from afar. That evening, as she prepared to leave, she walked one last time through the valley paths. She paused by a small river where the water sparkled like glass. She took a deep breath, letting the cool air fill her lungs, and whispered a quiet goodbye, not to the place, but to the part of herself that had once depended on others for belonging. She boarded the return bus the next morning, carrying with her only a few small souvenirs, a jar of honey, a shawl, and the same rose she had taken from home, now pressed carefully between the pages of her journal. As the bus rolled down the winding roads, she looked back one last time at the fading peaks. They didn't feel distant. They felt like they had stitched themselves into her somehow. She closed her eyes and smiled. The trip she took instead wasn't just a journey to the mountains. It was a journey back to herself. And for the first time in a very long while, she didn't feel left out. She felt, finally, enough. When I came back home, the house smelled faintly of dust and dried roses. It was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that waits for something to break it. I placed my small suitcase by the couch and stood for a moment, just breathing. The trip had changed me in ways I hadn't expected. There was a calmness in me now, the kind that comes after a storm has passed, even if you can still see the clouds in the distance. But as I walked through each room, I realized that peace found elsewhere doesn't always follow you home. My neighbor, Mrs. Lawson, must have seen me from her window because she came over almost immediately. She was carrying her usual basket of muffins. She always baked too many when she was nervous. "Welcome back, dear," she said, her smile a little forced. I heard about the wedding." I froze. "The wedding?" I asked, pretending to sound casual. "Yes," she said softly. "It was last weekend. Looked like quite a gathering. I saw the pictures online. Everyone seemed so happy." She hesitated, then added, "You weren't there, right?" I managed a small nod. "No, I wasn't." The conversation didn't need to go further. I thanked her for the muffins and promised to visit later, though I knew I wouldn't. As soon as she left, I went inside and sat by the kitchen table. My tea kettle hissed softly on the stove, the same way it had before I left, unchanged, indifferent. For a few minutes, I tried to shake it off. Maybe I didn't need to know anything more. Maybe peace meant letting go. But curiosity is a strange thing, especially when you've spent your life being left out of the conversations that mattered. That evening, I opened my phone. The first thing that appeared on my screen was a photo, my brother Mark and his new wife, Emily, standing under a white archway, surrounded by fairy lights. They looked radiant. The caption read, "Forever starts here, red heart, #family, #blessed." The irony of that hashtag didn't escape me. I scrolled further. My cousins, my aunts, even some neighbors. Everyone had been there. Everyone except me. Then, one comment caught my attention. It was from a woman named Lydia. The name was familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. The comment read, "You both deserve the world. After all you've been through, this moment is truly special." I frowned. After all you've been through, what had they been through that I didn't know about? Something didn't feel right. I set the phone down, but my mind was already spinning. The next day, I decided to visit my mother's house. She lived only a few streets away, but ever since the wedding invitation incident, we hadn't spoken much. I stood on her porch for a long moment before knocking. She opened the door slowly. Her expression shifted from surprise to discomfort in a second. "Chloe," she said, her voice soft but uneasy. "You're back." "I am," I said. "Can I come in?" The house smelled like old lavender and lemon polish. Everything looked the same, tidy, proper, untouched. My mother always took pride in her home. It was her armor against gossip. I sat on the couch, waiting for her to speak. I saw pictures of the wedding. I said, "Finally." "Yes," she replied after a pause. "It was lovely." The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument could. "Mom," I said quietly, "why didn't anyone tell me? I thought maybe there was a mistake." Or, "There was no mistake," she interrupted, her tone sharper now. "Mark made the guest list. He didn't think it would be appropriate." "Appropriate," I repeated, my voice trembling. "I'm his sister." She sighed, pressing her hand against her forehead. "Chloe, you always take things so personally. It was his day. They wanted it small, just family." I stared at her, disbelief flooding through me. "I am family," I said slowly. "Aren't I?" She didn't answer. She just busied herself by straightening the cushions, avoiding my eyes. And in that moment, I realized she wasn't uncomfortable because I was hurt. She was uncomfortable because she knew something I didn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her words. He didn't think it would be appropriate. The phrase gnawed at me. What could possibly make my presence inappropriate? Around midnight, I decided to check my old email account, the one I rarely used anymore. I remembered that Mark used to send me messages there when we were younger, small updates, pictures, silly jokes. After scrolling through years of unread messages, I found one from Lydia, dated almost 2 years ago. It read, "Hi, Chloe. I know this is unexpected, but I thought you should know that your brother and Emily have been through something complicated. Please don't reach out to them right now. It might make things harder." No explanation. No details. Just that. And suddenly, everything clicked. Lydia was Emily's friend. The same one who had commented under their wedding post. But what did she mean by complicated? The next morning, I drove to the old library downtown. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly, but I needed quiet, a place where my thoughts could breathe. While there, I ran into an old neighbor, Mrs. Dempsey, who had known our family for decades. She was sitting by the window, reading the newspaper. "Chloe, my goodness, I almost didn't recognize you," she said warmly. "How have you been?" We talked for a bit, and then, as naturally as if she'd been waiting to say it, she sighed and said, "It's such a shame about what happened back then, before Mark's engagement." My pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" She looked surprised. "You don't know? I thought your mother might have told you." "Told me what?" She hesitated, glancing around as if the walls could listen. "There was a lot of talk, dear. Something about money. Your father's will. Mark wanted to handle things quietly, and, well, there were disagreements. Hard feelings. Some people thought you got more than your share." I stared at her, stunned. "That's not true," I said softly. "I didn't even take what I was owed. I let Mark handle everything." "Yes, but that's not what people believe," she said gently. "Rumors spread, and no one wanted to reopen old wounds." For a moment, the world felt blurry. So that was it, not a mistake, not a forgotten invitation, but deliberate exclusion, because of lies whispered behind closed doors. I thanked her politely and left before she could say more. On the drive home, memories came flooding back. My father's funeral, the meeting with the lawyer, Mark insisting he'd take care of everything. I had trusted him completely. I didn't ask questions then, but maybe I should have. That night, I pulled out an old envelope from the drawer, the one with my father's handwriting on it. Inside was a copy of the will, which I had never read carefully. As I unfolded the paper, my hands trembled. There it was in black and white. My father had divided his estate evenly between us. There was no question, no dispute, no condition. Yet, when I looked through my old bank statements, I saw it. My portion had never arrived. Mark had taken it, and everyone, my mother, his friends, Even Emily had helped him keep it quiet. The next day, I confronted him. He was surprised to see me at his doorstep. He lived only a few miles away, in a neat little house with white shutters and a perfectly trimmed lawn, the kind of life that looked good in photos. He opened the door with a cautious smile. "Chloe, what a surprise." I saw the wedding pictures. I said, my voice steady. "Beautiful ceremony." "Thank you," he said awkwardly. "I meant to call you—" "Don't," I interrupted. "We both know you didn't forget." His expression tightened. "Look, Chloe, things were complicated. I didn't want drama. Emily thought it would be best if—" "If what?" I cut in sharply. "If your sister didn't show up? If the people who knew what you did stayed quiet?" He froze. "What are you talking about?" I took the folded copy of the will from my bag and placed it in his hand. "You know exactly what I'm talking about." His face went pale. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, "You weren't supposed to find out." The silence that followed felt endless. I could hear the faint tick of a clock inside the house, each second slicing through the air. "Why, Mark?" I asked, my voice breaking now. "You had everything. Why did you need to take mine, too?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly smaller, almost fragile. "I was drowning, Chloe," he said. "The business was collapsing. I thought I could fix it before anyone noticed. I told myself I'd pay you back. And when you couldn't—" I whispered. "I panicked. Emily said it would just complicate things, if you knew. So we stayed quiet. And when the wedding came, she didn't want tension. She said, sorry, dear, this event is for family only, right?" I finished bitterly. He winced. There it was, the full truth laid bare at last. Not just about the wedding, but about years of trust quietly betrayed. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, letting the weight of it all settle. Then I said quietly, "You didn't lose my money, Mark. You lost my trust. That's something you can't replace." He tried to apologize, to explain, but I turned away before he could finish. As I walked down his driveway, the wind picked up, carrying with it the faint scent of roses, the same kind I had left in my kitchen. And for the first time, I understood what forgiveness might mean. Not forgetting, not excusing, just finally refusing to carry someone else's silence anymore. I thought I had left everything behind when I walked away from my brother's wedding week, the whispers, the lies, the cold stares that had turned my family into strangers. But life has a strange way of making sure the truth doesn't stay buried. Sometimes it follows you in quiet ways, a photograph you didn't expect to see, a message that reopens an old wound, or a dream that refuses to fade. It started 2 months after the wedding. I was back home, trying to move on, spending more time in my garden and volunteering at a local shelter. I told myself I was at peace, that what happened no longer mattered. Yet deep inside, I carried a heavy silence. Every time I watered my plants, I'd think of how my mother used to tell me, "Family is the soil we grow from." But now, that soil felt poisoned. One Sunday morning, as I made coffee and scrolled through my phone, a notification popped up, a tagged photo. It was from an old college friend who had attended my brother's wedding. My hands froze midair, against the backdrop of golden lights and polished smiles. There they were, my entire family beaming. My brother in his tuxedo, my mother with her proud smile, my sister-in-law looking radiant in white. And behind them was the woman I least expected to see, Aunt Marianne. My mother had told me she wasn't invited, that there was bad blood from years ago, but there she was, laughing with my father, holding his arm. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just her presence that shook me, it was what I noticed in the background. A glimpse of a photo board decorated with family memories, and right at the center, a picture of my late grandmother, The one I'd given to my mother, framed in silver. That frame was missing from my house. I set the phone down, my hands trembling. They hadn't just excluded me. They had taken something deeply personal, something that belonged to me. The photograph of Grandma wasn't just a keepsake. It was the last thing she touched before she passed away. I had kept it beside my bed for years. I remembered noticing it missing a few weeks before the wedding, but assumed I'd misplaced it. Now I knew better. I spent the next few hours pacing, replaying every conversation in my head. The calmness I'd built for months began to crack. My mother's words, "It's just family, dear," echoed in my mind, cruelly ironic now. I decided to call her. She picked up after a few rings. "Chloe," she said, her tone tight, cautious. "Hi, Mom," I said softly, trying to steady my voice. "I saw the wedding pictures." A pause. "Oh, you did." I noticed something. I continued. "Grandma's silver frame. It was at the venue. You told me it got lost years ago." Her silence stretched. Then she sighed. "It wasn't lost, Chloe. I borrowed it. It felt right to have her there, watching over your brother's big day." "Without telling me?" I asked. "It wasn't just a decoration, Mom. That was mine." "Chloe, please don't make a scene over this," she said quickly. "You didn't come to the wedding, so I wasn't invited." I snapped. My voice cracked, surprising even me. "Don't twist that." Another pause. I could almost hear her guilt breathing through the line. Then, in a whisper, she said something that shattered the air between us. "It was your father's idea. He thought your presence might upset everyone." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Upset everyone? For what? For existing? For not being as agreeable as they wanted? I felt my chest tighten. "Mom," I said quietly, "how long have I been the problem in this family?" She didn't answer. The call ended soon after, leaving me with more questions than before. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed the wedding photo in my mind, the way my family stood together, as if nothing had happened. I thought about my father's proud smile, my brother's laugh, my mother's graceful poise. They looked complete, as though I had never been a part of them. That realization hurt more than anything. 2 days later, something unexpected happened. A message appeared in my inbox from an unknown number. The preview read, "You deserve to know the truth." I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a short message and a video attachment. The message said, "You didn't hear this from me. Watch before it disappears." My hands shook as I pressed play. It was a recording from the night of the rehearsal dinner. The camera was shaky, but I recognized the voices immediately. My father's deep tone, my mother's measured replies, and my brother's nervous laughter. The video captured them at a table, talking quietly. Then my father said, "Let's just agree. Chloe won't be there. She'll make things uncomfortable. You know how emotional she gets." My mother nodded reluctantly. "But she'll notice. She'll get over it." My father said coldly, "It's better this way. We don't need drama." My breath caught. My brother's voice joined in. "She's my sister, Dad." My father leaned forward. "And she'll always be. But this is our day, not hers." The video ended abruptly. I sat there, frozen. My heart felt like it was breaking all over again. Not because of what they said, but because of how calmly they said it, as if erasing me from the most important event in my brother's life was simply a matter of convenience. The next morning, I did something impulsive. I packed a small bag and drove to the lake where my family used to go every summer. I hadn't been there in years, not since things had started changing between us. The air smelled like pine and old memories. I sat by the water, watching the gentle ripples reflect the orange sky, and for the first time, I let myself cry, really cry. Then I heard footsteps. I turned around, and saw someone I didn't expect. My brother, Ethan. He looked older, tired, almost burdened. "Chloe," he said softly, "I figured I might find you here." For a moment, I didn't speak. Then, without looking at him, I said, "Did you send me that video?" He hesitated. "Yes." I turned toward him. "Why now?" He exhaled. "Because I can't live with it anymore. The wedding, it wasn't what it looked like. I thought keeping quiet would protect everyone, but it only hurt you and me." I studied his face, the guilt in his eyes, the way he fidgeted with his wedding ring. "You let them do it," I whispered. "I know," he said, voice cracking, "and I hate myself for it. They told me you didn't want to come, that you were angry at us. I believed them, but when I realized the truth, it was too late." I didn't respond. I just stared at the lake, remembering how we used to skip stones together as kids. He continued, "Mom's been crying since you stopped answering her calls. Dad, well, he still thinks he did the right thing." I let out a dry laugh. "Of course he does." After a long silence, Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out something wrapped in tissue. He handed it to me. When I opened it, I gasped. It was Grandma's silver frame. "She wanted you to have it," he said softly. "After the wedding, Mom told me to take it down. I kept it." Tears filled my eyes again, not out of anger this time, but something deeper, a mix of grief, love, and fragile forgiveness. I clutched the frame, tracing the worn edges with my thumb. "She'd be so disappointed," I whispered. "Maybe," he said, "but she'd also be proud that you didn't let their actions change who you are." We sat there for hours, talking about everything we'd never said, the misunderstandings, the expectations, the quiet pressure of being part of a family that valued appearances over honesty. For the first time, I saw my brother not as the golden child, but as someone just as lost as I was. Before he left, he said something that stayed with me. "One day, they'll realize what they did. You won't have to say a word. It'll haunt them on its own." And he was right. Months later, I received another message from my mother, a photo of her and Dad at the same lake. Her caption simply said, "We miss you." I didn't reply, but I saved it, not out of bitterness, but because it felt like a quiet beginning of something healing. Now, whenever I look at Grandma's photo, I think about how life forces us to confront the truth, even when we try to hide from it. The wedding that once broke me now stands as a reminder of strength. They might remember it as the happiest day of their lives, but deep down, I know it haunts them, not because of guilt alone, but because the love they shut out still lingers in every corner of that day. And that's something no silence can erase. Looking back now, I realize that sometimes the biggest heartbreaks don't come from strangers. They come from the people you trusted to stand beside you, the ones who were supposed to protect your heart. My family's betrayal wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, polite, and hidden behind smiles and silk dresses. That kind of pain lingers longer because it teaches you something about love, that not everyone who shares your blood shares your heart. But pain has a strange way of leading us toward truth. I used to think I needed their approval to feel whole, that being left out made me less worthy. It took losing them to understand that love built on conditions isn't love at all. It's control wrapped in sentiment. Real love, the kind that lasts, doesn't need invitations or explanations. It shows up even when it's inconvenient, even when it's uncomfortable. The wedding that once haunted me no longer does. Now, when I think about it, I don't see the decorations or the guests. I see what was missing: honesty, compassion, and the courage to speak up. In their silence, I found my voice. In their rejection, I discovered freedom. And in the quiet that followed, I met a version of myself I never knew existed, strong, calm, and unafraid to walk alone. It's strange, isn't it? How the same moment that was meant to break you can become the one that builds you back stronger. My brother and I still talk sometimes. He's learning, just like I am, that family isn't something you're born into. It's something you choose to nurture. My parents are still distant, but I've stopped waiting for apologies. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't for them. It's for me, so I can move forward without bitterness shadowing every sunrise. Now, when people ask about that wedding, I simply smile and say, it taught me what love shouldn't look like. Because sometimes the lesson isn't about getting even, it's about getting free. And freedom, I've learned, feels a lot like peace. If you've ever been left out, if someone once made you feel like you didn't belong, I hope my story reminds you you never needed their invitation to shine. You don't have to chase validation from people who can't see your worth. The right people will never make you beg for a seat at their table. They'll build a new one with you. So wherever you're watching from, maybe your own kitchen, your car, or a quiet corner of your day, I hope you find the courage to forgive, to let go, and to love yourself a little louder. Because sometimes walking away from what broke you isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of everything good that's still waiting for you.